Keanu Reeves steps onto Vanessa Cross's talk show, the audience is primed for the usual heartwarming and motivational interview they've come to expect from the beloved actor. Known for his humble nature and inspiring presence, Keanu is typically a beacon of positivity, radiating kindness and wisdom in every appearance. But tonight, the usual script is about to be flipped. Vanessa Cross, a journalist renowned for her biting, confrontational interview style, isn't interested in drawing out the traditional narrative. She's here to dig deeper, to challenge Keanu in ways that no one else has dared to before. This isn't going to be the feel-good conversation everyone was anticipating. This is about getting to the raw, uncomfortable truths. As Keanu takes his seat, there's an undeniable shift in the air. You can feel the tension in the studio, like the calm before a storm. Vanessa, sitting across from him, is the picture of poise and sharpness, her trademark smile never faltering. Clutching her cue cards with a subtle grip, she's ready to unleash a series of questions designed to provoke, to stir the pot, and possibly even expose vulnerabilities that Keanu has carefully kept hidden. The audience feels the shift too, their energy shifting from admiration to curiosity, wondering just how far this interview will go. But what Vanessa doesn't expect is that in just a few moments, she herself will be the one left speechless. Keanu, in his understated way, is about to turn the tables, leaving everyone in the room stunned. This is going to be a night that no one will forget. Before we dive deeper into the unfolding drama, take a moment to let us know where you're tuning in from, and if you're a fan of stories like this, don't forget to subscribe. We've got more incredible moments coming your way soon. The studio is abuzz with excitement. The lights overhead are bright and crisp, casting a perfect glow over the polished set. The audience, already on edge, murmurs in anticipation. Colorful signs wave in the air, some reading Keanu, "You're our hero and thank you for being you," a testament to the deep love and respect the public holds for him. Behind the scenes, cameras shift into place, and the countdown begins, every second now drawing them closer to the main event. And then, the moment everyone has been waiting for, Keanu steps onto the stage. His arrival is calm yet commanding. His movements are measured, steady, as though every step is deliberate and intentional. He's dressed simply, as always, no flashy suits or extravagant attire. A plain black shirt, a well-worn blazer, and jeans that have seen their share of the world. His dark hair falls just enough to touch his shoulders, giving him an air of quiet mystery. His demeanor doesn't shout for attention, but rather, he pulls you in with a calm magnetism that has the room in an almost reverential silence. The applause that follows is spontaneous and heartfelt. Cheers and shouts of his name fill the room, but Keanu only raises a hand in acknowledgement before taking his seat. His demeanor is effortless, at ease with himself and the moment, despite the palpable energy in the studio. The audience is clearly in awe, but there's a slight shift as everyone waits for what's to come. Across from him sits Vanessa Cross, known for her sharp wit and even sharper questions. She's dressed impeccably, her blazer fitted to perfection and her hair tied back into a sleek, no-nonsense style. With her cue cards clutched firmly in one hand, she fixes her gaze on Keanu, her expression a mix of professionalism and something more intense. She's sizing him up, looking for any opening to pull him out of his comfort zone. The moment she speaks, you can tell she's not here to indulge in pleasantries. "Keanu," she begins, her voice clear and cutting, "you have fame, fortune, and could live like royalty, yet you take the subway, donate millions, and avoid luxury. Does that really make a difference in the world?" The question lingers in the air, and the audience feels it. Some squirm in their seats, others tense, waiting for Keanu's answer. The air is thick with anticipation. But Keanu doesn't flinch. He's calm, composed, as though he's been asked this question 1,000 times before. He doesn't rush to answer, taking a beat to reflect before responding with a simple, but profound question of his own. "Vanessa," he asks softly, "have you ever thought about how many people feel invisible every day?" The room falls silent. The weight of his words hangs in the air, leaving Vanessa momentarily speechless. His response is unassuming, yet so deeply thoughtful that it cuts right to the heart of the matter. The audience is visibly moved by his reflection, some even taken aback by the depth of his response. Vanessa, however, is not easily deterred. She flips to the next question with determination in her eyes. She's prepared for the real challenge now, the question she believes will finally rattle him. As she adjusts in her seat, the tension in the room thickens. The air is heavy, the stakes higher than before. With a measured smile, Vanessa tosses her next card onto the table. This is where she plans to break him. "Keanu," she asks, her voice low and deliberate, "you've lost your fiancé, your baby, your best friend. Didn't that destroy you? Don't you feel, in the end, everything is just pain?" This question lands like a blow. The room goes still. Some of the audience gasps in shock, others exchange uneasy glances. Vanessa has gone straight for the jugular, confronting Keanu with the rawest aspects of his personal tragedy. It's a question that cuts deep, forcing him to confront the darkest parts of his past. The tension is unbearable. Will Keanu crack under the weight of her inquiry, or will he once again surprise everyone with his strength? Everyone watches, waiting for his response. Uncomfortable with the blunt and almost callous way Vanessa approaches the subject, Keanu's expression shifts ever so slightly. He lowers his head a fraction, as if gathering himself before the storm, and his fingers intertwine over his knees. It's a subtle movement, but it's enough to signal a shift in the atmosphere. The studio, filled with the usual energy of live television, goes absolutely still. Silence hangs heavy, thick as the air before a thunderstorm. The cameras zoom in on Keanu's face, capturing every delicate nuance. His calm, serene expression, which normally radiates peace, now holds something deeper. In the stillness, it's as if you can see the weight of years, the unspoken grief that lurks beneath his gentle exterior. The losses, the pain, the emotional scars that words cannot quite encompass. For a brief moment, the audience can feel the vastness of Keanu's inner world, a place where love and sorrow coexist. Vanessa, ever the professional, watches him closely. Her eyes search for any hint of hesitation, any flicker of vulnerability she can exploit. She's seen this before, the way some people crack under the weight of a harsh question. She's waiting for Keanu to break, to show a crack in his armor. But what she doesn't expect is the stillness that follows, a quiet strength that doesn't yield. Then, Keanu slowly lifts his gaze. It's deliberate, like the moment a man steps into a room full of strangers yet remains completely unfazed. He takes a deep, slow breath, as though he's not just inhaling air, but drawing in the very essence of patience. When he speaks, his voice is calm, so calm, it almost seems too gentle for the intensity of the moment. He responds with an almost startling level of composure. "Pain never destroyed me. It taught me. It taught me that nothing is permanent, that every moment matters, and that true love never disappears." The words hang in the air like a soft echo, a quiet truth that reverberates throughout the studio. The room remains silent, almost reverent. Some audience members are visibly moved, their eyes beginning to glisten with unshed tears, while a woman in the front row discreetly dabs at her eyes with a tissue. The weight of Keanu's words settles over them, and even those who are not familiar with his personal history can feel the depth of what he's saying. There's no grand gesture, no dramatic declaration, just an honest reflection that strikes at the heart of human experience. The camera shifts focus to Vanessa. Her usual sharp smile falters for the briefest of moments, and for the first time, there's a flicker of uncertainty in her eyes. It's subtle, but it's there, surprise, perhaps, or even a moment of regret. It's almost as if Keanu's response has caught her off guard, a reminder that not everyone can be bent to her will with a simple, cutting question. But Vanessa Cross is not one to back down, especially in front of an audience. She quickly regains her composure, sitting up straighter as if to remind herself who's in control. Her fingers glide over her cue cards, and with a slight, almost knowing smile, she prepares herself for her next move, one that she's sure will finally shake him. The room, still heavy with the emotional resonance of Keanu's response, grows quieter. Some members of the audience are still processing what they just heard, while others glance toward Vanessa, eager to see how she will follow up. But Vanessa is unfazed, even if the wind has shifted a little. She straightens her posture and, with calculated grace, flips through her cards. Her eyes narrow, sharp, and focused, as she leans forward slightly, ready to strike once more. There's something predatory in the way she approaches the next question, the way she measures each word before she speaks. Keanu, she begins, her voice now cold and firm, you're over 50 now. Hollywood doesn't care about actors your age anymore. Don't you fear becoming irrelevant? The audience reacts immediately. There are gasps of shock, some incredulous whispers, others frowning at the bluntness of the question. Vanessa's words seem to hang in the air like an accusation, and for a moment, the studio feels like a pressure cooker, waiting to explode. Keanu doesn't respond immediately. Instead, he gently rubs his fingers together, lost in thought. His gaze drifts off, and for a brief moment, he seems far away, his mind wandering to a place only he can access. The audience watches him intently, trying to gauge his reaction, but Keanu's calm remains unbroken. His silence stretches, and for the first time, it's not awkward, it's purposeful. Vanessa, noticing the pause, smiles inwardly. She believes this is the opening she's been waiting for, the moment when Keanu cracks, when the facade slips and she can finally expose his vulnerability. She leans in slightly, eyes gleaming with the anticipation of the moment she's sure will come. But when Keanu finally lifts his eyes to meet hers, there's no panic, no defensiveness. Instead, his gaze is steady, almost serene. It's a look that none of them expected. Vanessa, he says, his voice soft but filled with meaning, have you ever seen a sunset? The question catches Vanessa off guard. Her brows furrow in confusion, as if she wasn't expecting such a response. The audience, too, seems taken aback by his unexpected answer. A silence spreads, and the tension that had been building is now replaced with a quiet curiosity. Vanessa blinks, unsure of how to proceed. But Keanu continues, his tone steady and unyielding, a sunset is beautiful, but have you ever heard anyone call it irrelevant just because the night is coming? And just like that, the room erupts. The audience, stunned by the beauty and simplicity of Keanu's response, bursts into applause. Shouts of support and admiration fill the air. Yes. Bravo, Keanu. You're amazing, someone calls from the back. The applause builds, a wave of emotion and respect flowing from the crowd. It's a moment of pure connection, a shared understanding of the profound simplicity in Keanu's words. For a brief, surreal moment, Vanessa is frozen. The carefully constructed control she thought she had over the interview slips from her grasp entirely. Her rehearsed smile fades, and in its place is an unreadable expression, part surprise, part disbelief, and maybe even a flicker of respect for the man sitting across from her. Keanu didn't attack her. He didn't retaliate with anger or defensiveness. Instead, he turned her question back on her, responding with a quiet, reflective wisdom that left the entire room in awe. Vanessa takes a deep breath, attempting to recover the ground she's lost. She looks at her cards, momentarily unsure of her next move. But she's not one to give up easily. There's still a way, she thinks, to find the weakness she's been searching for in him. She's determined to make her point, to expose something raw, something real. Her fingers hover over her cue cards as she prepares her next question, her eyes narrowing as she leans forward once more, focusing on Keanu. Keanu, she begins again, her voice cool and calculating, you grew up without a father. Your mother worked hard. To regain control of the interview, Vanessa reaches for her cue cards, but the words she's looking for seem to vanish. She flips through them, but they feel light, almost irrelevant now, as if Keanu's response has stripped them of their power. The question cards, those carefully crafted weapons of interrogation, are suddenly insignificant in the face of the profound, unshakable calm that Keanu exudes. The air in the studio grows heavier, charged with an almost palpable tension. Vanessa, used to being the one who dominates the conversation, who holds the reins and steers it in the direction she wants, finds herself struggling to maintain the grip she thought she had. In this moment, she feels something unfamiliar, vulnerability. Keanu, meanwhile, remains utterly composed. His voice is steady, his words deliberate, and his conviction unwavering. Fear is something we all face, Vanessa. It's a natural part of life, but it doesn't define us. Faith is what helps us move forward, even when we can't see what's ahead. The room goes quiet again, but this silence is different. It's thick, almost reverential, as though the audience is absorbing not just the words, but the spirit behind them. The only sound in the room is the soft rustling of Vanessa's cards as she flips through them, her fingers moving mechanically, almost as if searching for a question that will undo the calm Keanu has imposed. But when she looks up at him, there's a new uncertainty in her eyes, something she hasn't felt in years. For the first time in this interview, Keanu's words have pierced through her usual defenses, leaving her temporarily disarmed. She doesn't know how to respond. The interview has shifted from a power struggle to something far deeper, something she wasn't prepared for. The audience, once divided between murmurs of discomfort and scattered applause, is now united in their respect for Keanu. His words have bridged a connection with them. They can feel the sincerity in his response, the wisdom in his simplicity. This is no longer about seeking vulnerability or forcing a reaction, it's become something much more profound. Keanu isn't just answering questions, he's offering pieces of himself, revealing truths about life and the human experience that resonate with everyone in the room. And for the first time, it feels as if Vanessa is the one on the receiving end of that vulnerability. She is the one being exposed. Vanessa presses her lips together, her mind racing, but no sharp retort comes. She tries to regain control, but she can't shake the feeling that she's lost her footing. This wasn't the interview she had imagined. She had planned this moment as a power play, an opportunity to strip away the mystique of Keanu's public persona, to expose some hidden vulnerability or flaw. She had hoped to rattle him, to provoke him into a moment of weakness, but instead, he had turned each question into an opportunity to share wisdom, to reflect on his own life in a way that made her feel small. She hadn't expected to be the one on the defensive. She clears her throat, trying to recover some semblance of control. But her voice, when it comes, is quieter than before, softer. So, Keanu, she begins, her tone almost hesitant now. Do you believe that everyone can find that faith? Or is it something only a few are lucky enough to experience? Keanu doesn't rush to answer. His gaze drifts, distant, almost as if he's weighing the question against something far bigger than the confines of this interview. For a moment, it's clear he's not speaking to her, or even to the audience. He's speaking to something more universal. And when he responds, his voice carries a depth that resonates beyond the studio walls. I think faith is something we all have within us. It's not about luck. It's about choosing to believe, even in the hardest moments. It's about deciding not to let fear take over. His words land like a quiet revelation. It's not just the content of what he says, it's the way he says it. There's no pretension, no artifice. Just simple, heartfelt truth. For a brief moment, Vanessa wonders if the real question she should be asking is whether she, too, has that kind of faith. And in that instant, she realizes that, in this conversation, she's the one who's been stripped bare. The audience, now fully attuned to the energy in the room, watches in rapt attention. The respect they feel for Keanu grows with every word he speaks. This is no longer an interview to uncover secrets or expose weaknesses. It's become something much more profound, an intimate, shared experience. Keanu has taken the narrative, twisted it into something more meaningful, something that transcends the superficiality of celebrity gossip and turned it into a conversation about life, loss, and the human condition. And in doing so, he's managed to create something deeper, more impactful, than anyone could have expected. Vanessa leans back in her chair, defeated. She's not sure whether she's impressed, frustrated, or simply in awe of the man sitting across from her. Maybe it's all of those things. She had come into this interview thinking she would be the one in control, the one steering the conversation. But Keanu's quiet strength and wisdom have shifted the dynamic completely. Now, it feels like she's the one who's been caught off guard, the one who's been exposed, not as a journalist uncovering truths, but as someone forced to confront their own assumptions and limitations. In that moment, Vanessa understands something fundamental. Not every person can be manipulated, not every story can be forced into the mold she's accustomed to. Keanu Reeves, it seems, has a story of his own, and it's one he's not willing to let anyone control, not even her. Vanessa's fingers nervously trace the edges of her question cards, but for the first time in her career, they feel weightless. What once seemed like carefully crafted tools for dissection, her arsenal of psychological traps, now appear trivial. The air in the studio feels denser, as though the very fabric of the conversation has shifted in an unexpected direction. She had entered this interview with a set of meticulously planned questions, each designed to unravel Keanu's carefully guarded persona, to expose his weaknesses and vulnerabilities. But instead of falling into her traps, Keanu had turned the tables. He had transformed the interview into something much grander. Something personal. Something real. Vanessa, usually the one in control, feels the grip she once had slip away. This wasn't a battle of wits anymore. It wasn't even an interview. It was a conversation about life, about the very essence of being. And as she stares down at the empty cards in her hands, she comes to an unsettling realization. Everything she had prepared for, everything she thought she was in control of, no longer matters. The story she wanted to create, the narrative she had plotted so carefully, has crumbled, leaving her standing in the ruins of her own expectations. In a moment of clarity, Vanessa understands that there is only one question left to ask. It's the one question she believes might finally break through Keanu's calm facade, the one question she thinks will reveal the final chink in his armor. She lifts her gaze, her eyes meeting his for the first time in what feels like hours. This time, her voice is barely more than a whisper, the weight of her words pressing down on her chest. What if no one remembers you when you're gone? The question lands like a stone sinking into still water. The air in the studio grows thick, and the audience holds its collective breath. The camera zooms in, capturing the intensity of the moment. It's a question Vanessa has asked countless times, a question designed to expose an actor's insecurities, to unravel their carefully constructed public persona. But when she asks it of Keanu, she's met with something unexpected. For the first time in the entire interview, Keanu doesn't respond immediately. The silence stretches between them, thick and charged, as though the question itself has momentarily paralyzed the room. And then, Keanu does something she didn't anticipate. He smiles, not the rehearsed, superficial smile of a Hollywood star, but something deeper, more human. It's a soft, almost melancholy expression, one that seems to hold a quiet understanding of the impermanence of life. He breathes deeply, and when he speaks, his voice is steady, infused with the kind of wisdom that can only come from living through hardship and loss. The question isn't what they will remember about me, he pauses, letting his words settle in the air. The question is, what will they remember about you? The effect is immediate. A ripple of surprise moves through the audience. Some gasp softly, others exchange glances, realizing that for the first time, Vanessa is the one who is being forced to confront something. Her question, designed to expose Keanu's vulnerabilities, has been turned back on her, and it cuts deeper than anything she had prepared. The cameras zoom in on her face, capturing the moment when the invincible interviewer, who has spent years breaking down public figures, is caught off guard. Vanessa's lips part, but no words come out. Her fingers tighten around the question cards in her lap, but she doesn't glance at them. The silence stretches, suffocating her. She doesn't know what to say. She doesn't have a prepared response. The carefully constructed walls she's built around herself, around her career, seem to crumble as Keanu's simple question hangs in the air. And then, something no one expected happens. A single tear slips down Vanessa's cheek. She doesn't wipe it away, doesn't make any attempt to hide it. The camera captures the tear as it falls, tracing the path down her face. Her breath catches in her throat, and she swallows hard, as though something heavy, something buried deep inside her, has just been uncovered. For the first time, Vanessa Cross is no longer the interviewer. She's a person, vulnerable and exposed, caught in a moment of self-reflection. Keanu watches her, his gaze not filled with triumph or smugness, but with quiet understanding. There's no sense of victory in his eyes, no sense of having won. He simply looks at her as one human being to another, acknowledging the rawness of the moment. He stands up, and the room feels quieter now. The applause that had once filled the space is replaced by a soft, contemplative silence. People are still, their faces reflecting the gravity of what has just transpired. Some audience members wipe away tears, others sit in stunned silence, processing the unexpected turn the interview has taken. The excitement that once fueled the energy of the room is now replaced by a deep respect, a silent acknowledgement of the profound shift that has just occurred. Vanessa remains seated, unmoving. The question cards, her weapon, her shield, lie discarded on the table before her. She doesn't need them anymore. Or perhaps, in this moment, she realizes she never truly did. The questions, the tactics, the persona she had built, they all seem insignificant now. What's left is something far more personal, something that transcends the surface level of her career and brings her face to face with her own life. The cameras continue to roll, capturing every moment of this unexpected turn of events. The world is still watching, but Vanessa isn't thinking about ratings, headlines, or the next big scoop. She's lost in her own thoughts, in the question Keanu has asked her, and in the realization that the impact of her own life may not be defined by the people she has questioned or exposed, but by the way she lives and what she leaves behind. As the screen begins to fade to black, a final message appears in soft, reflective text. Life is not about how long we live, but about the impact we leave behind. Soft, reflective music plays in the background, and the video ends. The quiet that fills the studio is a far cry from the noise that once surrounded the conversation. It's a moment of introspection, one that will stay with everyone who witnessed it long after the lights have gone down. A final message flashes across the screen. If this story touched you, like, comment, and share.